The sound of rain echoed against the broken glass of the gym window. Zane Walker sat alone in the corner, staring at the old boxing gloves hanging by a nail. The same gloves he once wore when the crowd chanted his name. Now, the cheers were gone, replaced by silence and the weight of regret. Every failure, every fall, played in his mind like a loop he couldn't escape. But somewhere beneath the ashes of defeat, a spark still lived, waiting, burning, whispering a promise. You are not done yet. The morning came quietly. No alarms, no rush, just the faint hum of a city that had forgotten his name. Zane Walker woke up on the worn-out couch of his small apartment, a cracked ceiling staring back at him. His body still ached from the last fight. Not the one in the ring, but the one with himself. He had once been called the Phoenix, the man who never stayed down. But fame burns fast, and his fall had been quicker than his rise. One bad decision, one failed match, one moment of weakness, and everything vanished. Sponsors, friends, the crowd. Now, he worked night shifts unloading boxes at the docks. The rhythm of lifting and dropping felt like punishment, each thud echoing the words he couldn't forget. You're finished. He tried not to look at his reflection in the window, but when he did, he saw a man who had traded glory for survival. Still, somewhere deep inside, a stubborn voice kept whispering, "It's not over." That voice grew louder the day he passed by the old gym again. The signboard was broken, the ring dusty, the lights long dead, but it called to him, like a ghost of who he used to be. He stood there for a long time, rain soaking his jacket, staring through the glass. His reflection merged with the faint memory of the man who once stood in that ring, fearless and unbroken. For the first time in years, Zane walked inside. The smell of sweat and dust hit him like a memory. His hand brushed the ropes. Old, rough, yet familiar. He dropped his duffel bag to the ground, the echo filling the empty space. He didn't have a plan, didn't even know why he was there. But as his hand tightened into a fist, a thought crossed his mind. Maybe this was where redemption begins, not with applause, but with silence. And as he stood there in the center of the ring, eyes closed, heart pounding, the whisper returned, stronger than ever. Rise. The first punch he threw after years echoed louder than he expected. Dust rose from the old bag, and his knuckles stung instantly. His form was gone, his rhythm lost. Each swing felt heavy, like he was fighting ghosts instead of air. He stopped, breathing hard, staring at the gloves that once defined him. They were torn, faded, but still his. He remembered the nights when he trained until dawn, when pain was purpose and sweat was proof. Somewhere in those memories, he found the reason he had come back. Days turned into weeks. Every morning before work, he would show up. No trainers, no crowd, just the sound of his fists finding their way back to life. He taped the broken floorboards, fixed the bag, cleaned the mirrors. Slowly, the gym began to breathe again, like it too wanted a second chance. But progress was cruel. His body resisted, his hands bled, and there were moments he wanted to quit all over again. Every time he thought he was ready, the mirror reminded him of who he wasn't anymore. Then one morning, as sunlight cut through the windows, Zane saw something new in his reflection. Not glory, not perfection, but effort. For the first time, he didn't hate what he saw. That small moment changed everything. He started running again. He rebuilt his diet, his focus, his discipline. No audience, no lights. Just the rhythm of rebirth. The same people who once praised him now passed him by, some laughing, some pitying. But Zane didn't stop to explain. He knew that rebuilding isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. One night, as he wrapped his hands in silence, the whisper came again, not as a voice, but as strength pulsing through his veins. He looked at the gloves one last time and smiled. He wasn't trying to return to who he was. He was fighting to become who he was meant to be. Night fell heavy that day. The streets were empty, the world asleep, but Zane was still awake. Standing in front of the mirror, fists bruised, knuckles raw. He wasn't fighting for fame anymore. He was fighting the voice inside him that whispered, "You'll never be enough." Every strike he threw now had a purpose. Not to win, but to silence doubt. But doubt doesn't die easy. It hides behind every memory, every failure, every name that left when he fell. One night, while shadowboxing under the flicker of a dying bulb, Zane's mind drifted back to the day it all fell apart. He remembered the championship, the roar of the crowd, the flash of cameras, and the one punch that ended everything. He had lost more than the match that night. He had lost belief. He stopped mid-punch, chest heaving, eyes glassy. Tears mixed with sweat as he whispered, "Why couldn't I just let it go?" Then, silence. And in that silence, he realized something he had never seen before. He had been waiting for someone to lift him back up, but nobody was coming. This time, it had to be him. He wrapped his hands again, slower, tighter. Not for the ring, but for himself. For every time he had broken and rebuilt in the dark. The next morning he stood outside, the first light touching his face. His body was still tired, but his soul felt lighter. There was peace in knowing he no longer needed to prove anything, except to the man in the mirror. And for the first time since the fall, Zane smiled. Not because he had won, but because he had stood back up. The world didn't notice when he started again, but that didn't matter anymore. Zane wasn't chasing applause now. He was chasing mastery. His mornings began before sunrise. Running through empty streets, lungs burning, shoes slapping against wet pavement, every step felt like redemption carved in motion. He trained like a man possessed, rebuilding muscle, endurance, and belief one bruise at a time. He wasn't the same fighter anymore. He wasn't fighting against life. He was learning to move with it. Pain became rhythm. Sweat became fuel. Each punch, each breath, carried meaning. Word started to spread. The old trainer, Mason, who once coached champions, showed up one morning at the gym door. He didn't say a word, just watched. After a while, he walked inside and dropped a pair of new gloves in front of Zane. "No one stays down forever," he said quietly. Zane looked at the gloves, his old fire sparking again. He accepted them, not as a gift, but as a challenge. Days turned into weeks, and the gym, once silent, now echoed with purpose. The bag swung harder, the air filled with rhythm, and for the first time in years, Zane's punches sang again. Not out of anger, but focus. Mason began training him again, pushing him beyond limits he thought were gone. Zane fell, got up, bled, pushed again. Every scar became a story, every ache, a reminder of how far he'd come. One evening, after a brutal session, Mason looked at him and said, "You're ready." Zane didn't smile. He just nodded, eyes calm, heart steady. He knew what ready meant. It wasn't about fighting an opponent. It was about proving to the world that ashes don't mean the end. They mean the beginning of something unbreakable. The night of the fight arrived like a storm. The arena lights glared down. The crowd roared. But Zane stood calm, silent, centered. He wasn't here for fame anymore. He was here to face his past, his fear, his fire. Every sound faded when he stepped between the ropes. For a brief moment, he looked at the canvas. The same place he once fell, broken and forgotten. But tonight, it felt different. It wasn't a battlefield anymore. It was his stage of rebirth. The bell rang. The first punch landed hard, shaking him, reminding him of pain, but also how far he had come. Zane moved with precision now. No panic, no doubt. Only rhythm and resolve. Round after round, he absorbed the blows, gave them back stronger. The crowd began to sense it. The man who was once finished was now rewriting his story. Mason's voice echoed from the corner. "Don't fight the man, fight your limits." Blood trickled down his lip, but Zane smiled. For the first time, he wasn't running from his pain. He was using it. Every hit turned into poetry, every dodge into purpose. The final round came. Both fighters exhausted, faces marked with battle, breathing fire. Zane closed his eyes for a second and saw his journey. The nights of silence, the mornings of struggle, the endless whispers of doubt. And then he saw it, the flame that never died. He opened his eyes, stepped forward, and unleashed everything he had. A final punch, a perfect strike. The opponent fell. The bell rang again. But this time, the sound wasn't an ending. It was freedom. The crowd exploded. Zayn dropped to his knees, eyes closed, tears mixing with sweat. He wasn't the champion of others. He was the champion of his own soul. Mason climbed into the ring and placed a hand on his shoulder. "Told you," he whispered, smiling. "No one stays down forever." Zayn looked up at the roaring crowd, lights blinding, heart steady. From ashes, he had found his glory. And deep down, he knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of everything he was meant to be.